This video is sponsored by World of Warships. Hey guys, Jay here, welcome to Models Memories Weekly, episode 131. Models Memories is a show about nothing and is filmed in front of a live studio audience. This is a show where we're talking about painting, modeling, and working experiences from the week. Now you might be thinking to yourself, Jay, you put out 3 videos a week. Ow! Could I possibly have more to say? Well, I do, and here goes. This week, there was a surprising flurry of new models and one I forgot to talk about last time. But first, do you like boats? Well then I have the game for you, World of Warships. Go head-to-head on the high seas as one of history's most iconic ships from a variety of classes, battleships, destroyers, aircraft carriers, cruisers, and submarines. Face off on one of more than 40 unique maps with dynamic weather and stunning new water visuals that will bring your battles for the ocean to life. Wargaming is adding something new to experience every week, from missions, events, and new content to play with. Since the launch of the game over 8 years ago, 500 ships across 10 different nations have been made available to sail. Oh, and did we mention the game is also available on console? And in celebration of the game's 8th birthday, Wargaming is sponsoring content for all new players of the game, Metal Titans Unite. This month only, you can go to battle as Vic Rattlehead or Dave Mustaine, the legendary lead of Megadeth, or show off an exclusive World of Warships MEGADETH skin. During registration, use the promo code MEGADETH to receive a huge starter pack including 200 doubloons, 500,000 credits, 7-day premium account time, Vic Rattlehead Commander, and a ship. I was using the Warhammer app this weekend to put together some new army lists to try out on the battlefield, and I completely forgot that Games Workshop had shown off the new Warhammer TV minis for this year. And they were surprisingly underwhelming. Getting models with your Warhammer TV subscription is pretty cool, I guess. Warhammer TV is a very awkward app where you get access to the army builder, but it's not that great of an army builder. You get access to the TV shows that they make, but some of the TV shows aren't that amazing. And really, I think hopefully the way to look at it is you're buying a model and it comes with all of this other junk. Except the models didn't knock my socks off this year. The new Castigator Commander is just a guy, like one single tiny little guy, an Imperial Guard guy. He's okay, and he doesn't look that much like the artwork that he's based on. And I feel like this artwork isn't like an iconic, amazing piece of art from Warhammer's history. It's just like one of those little pictures that you get when they need to fill up room in the codex. Like, it's a cool Castigator, but it's just a guy. Like, if you put this next to your Castigator squad, you wouldn't really be able to pick him out as something really interesting and special. It is just a tiny little guy. I don't know if he really holds up to the $60 value. The other miniature, Carlina von Karstein, is much more interesting in the silhouette. When it was just a silhouette that they were showing off, I was so sure it was a Dark Eldar, but like I knew it must be a Warhammer thing because they already showed, like the other model was a Castigator clearly, so they're not gonna do 2 Warhammer 40k things, so one of them had to be Age of Sigmar. And a vampire is a pretty strong, if somewhat generic choice. Like everybody loves vampires, and this is a pretty cool vampire. In the article, it says that it's gonna have an alternate head with exaggerated aristocratic hairstyle. I wanna see that head, because that head actually sounds a lot more exciting than the weird bug head, like the bug head helmet that this model has. I like this model a lot. For this year's subscription, this will be the one that I pick up, but man, it just doesn't have the juice of previous years. When the app actually first launched, there was the incredible statue of Vinikar Assassin sneaking a shot from on top of a Sisters of Battle, like ornate statue. And then in year 2, we got a pretty cool like retro Chaos Space Marine Terminator. This year, I kind of appreciate that they're not like the most amazing thing, or they're never frustratingly cool. Like it would be really annoying if it was like, oh, Creed, like, or a named character from Warhammer 40k. You can only get it if you subscribe to the Warhammer TV app, and like everyone needs to have this model for their army. It's always stuff that's not that big a deal, but I do like the vampire, and I think I'm just gonna take this vampire and turn it into a Dark Eldar anyway. Probably a Lamian would look really, really cool with a head swap and maybe just taking away a little bit of the armor and adding some more Dark Eldar gubbins. like their little drug tubes that run all over the place. I do like this model a lot. I think it's very neat. It's just, they're both really tiny little models. They don't feel very big and impressive. It's no orc war boss, just a little guy. Just a little guy for like 60 bucks. Is it worth it? I mean, I guess you could say it's the standard Games Workshop price of a small figure, so like $35, and then the rest of the benefits you get with your account makes up the rest of the $30. I don't know. Also, the Games Workshop app not automatically updating with the new codex information is garbage. I played a Tyrannid game this week and I had to use the old index rules, which I thought that they would have updated the app, but no, it's just the index rules. And if I want to get the codex rules into the app, I need to buy the codex and then enter the code, like, you know, Webkins back in the day when you'd buy a little plush toy and then you'd type in the code to get you into Webkins world. You have to do that to actually get your rules all in one place. And I'm not gonna do it. I am going to use the Tyrannid Codex rules. I will just have to acquire them from somewhere else. Exclusive models are kind of a cool thing from Games Workshop, and they also came out with one more. The Warhammer Day brand new miniature is an N-Ire champion from the Leagues of Votann. And I think this model's dope. I like the Leagues of Votann a lot. They have very much grown on me over the course of their reintroduction to the world of Warhammer. And the N-Ire champion model is fine. Like, it's cool. He's jumping off of a rock and he's kind of got a crazy look on his face, and he doesn't look incredibly imposing because he's a squat. He's a little dwarf guy, and so he's very short and chubby, and so it's not the most heroic pose, even though it's like a very classic Superman jumping pose. But the new one, just standing there with the shield and the hammer, and it's also kind of interesting to see the shield off of the arm, because when it's attached to the arm, it just looks like they have one giant slab arm. But here, with it just resting there, it feels so much more epic, so much more heroic. Ooh, I also really like the stag head. It's really cool. The dwarf, like pretty much every single Leagues of Votann unit comes with these little totems that are attached, and you can kind of pick between like a boar, a wolf, and a ram. But the stag is a pretty cool look. This model, the only thing I don't love is the shoulder pads. They just look absolutely ridiculous. And I'm a fan of big shoulder pads. I don't know if you guys know this, but I have 12,000 points of Space Marines. I know everything about giant shoulder pads, but these just look like the shoulder pad. It looks like there's more shoulder pad not attached to the shoulder than is attached to the shoulder. Although I think it could be easily fixed by just leaving off the right-hand shoulder pad and just having like all of the armor on the left side. You got the big slab shield, you got the giant shoulder pad, and the other side is left a little bit more like maneuverable. I think that just one little change would help a lot. Supposedly, Games Workshop showed off an article a while ago where they were talking about like 40 years of Warhammer. Look at the inspiration we took to create the squats. And supposedly these like egg-shaped exo armors are based on the old Saturnine pattern Terminator armor. Hard to believe. Like, they look incredibly different. Like, I can sort of agree with Games Workshop a little bit that like, well, the Saturnine Terminator has tons of shoulder and these guys have tons of shoulder, so that makes them the same, but it's pretty much where the similarities, like, it's pretty much where they end. I don't necessarily agree with Games Workshop that these are harken back to the days of yore from Warhammer's history. It's just a cool suit of power armor that's heavily inspired by Iron Man and other cool sci-fi things. I really like this miniature. If I played the Leagues of Votann, I would definitely have to get this, especially because the N-Hire champion is really good and really cheap in-game. So people are very often running 3 of them in their lists, and having at least one alt pose is really nice. Arguably, it should all come in the box. Like the excellent new Lictor for the Tyrannids, in that one box for that one model, you get so many different poses. I don't know how they managed to do it. Like, I guess because it's on a big sprue, because it's a larger model, they had just more room to add more things, where typically the characters are all on those tiny sprues that fit on the pegs in Warhammer stores. So I guess they didn't have the room to add all those different options, but I just really like this model. I wish this was the official model and the jumping off the rock N-Ire champion was the Games Day exclusive or the Warhammer Day exclusive model. Another reason why this model is far superior is it actually comes with a Leagues of Votann helmet. The really fun Spaceman helmet. Actually, you get the Spaceman helmet and you get the Spaceman helmet peeking through with the little visor halfway up his face. It's one of the most fun details of the Leagues of Votann and makes them actually look different to some of the other factions in Warhammer 40k, because with just bare heads, they're very much Space Marines, but with the chunky Spaceman space helmets. They really start to look very unique and very fun, and very squatty. Very Leagues of Votann. But speaking of Games Workshop not doing interesting things with their model kits, Games Workshop did an incredibly interesting thing with these new model kits. The Cerastus Knight, Archon, and Castigator both dropped kinda randomly and suddenly. Like, I guess we all assumed that they were coming out when they showed off the Lancer, but they made such a big deal of just the Lancer coming to plastic, it kinda made me wonder if the Lancer was gonna get a fancy fresh plastic remake, but then the other two variants were gonna just have their arms from Forge World, and you have to buy those separately and attach them, because Games Workshop has done that in the past. But no, these are gonna be full plastic kits. And holy moly, the ammo belt on the Mega Bolter. You literally make a chain link belt out of plastic and it hangs there, and that's the craziest thing. I guess I just assumed that Games Workshop was gonna have it be the pose for the Mega Bolter just has to be one way. I guess for the flamethrower too, because it also has tubes running to it. You have to pose it this way to get the chain to work correctly, and that's the breaks. Because that's always how it works with Games Workshop. Like when you buy Centurion warsuits and you want to put on the pipes, you have to pose the arms exactly how Games Workshop tells you to. Every time there's an ammo feed situation, you always have to do it exactly how the instructions say. But literally, you get 2 full sprues of chain links that you painstakingly glue together into a little necklace of an ammo belt. It's kind of wild. It's kind of wonderful. I really like it. And it's just funny. Like, it's so much extra plastic, but I am here for it. The Imperial Knight is one of the most impressive kits that Games Workshop makes. Not quite as impressive as the Redemptor Dreadnought. That kit is almost perfect, and it's like fully posable. It's almost a Gundam kit in the incredible level of posability of the Redemptor Dreadnought. The Knight is pretty darn good, where the arms and stuff can all go up and down, and if you glue everything just right and don't glue things the way, and if you just don't glue the exact right parts, you can actually get the arms to be fully posable. It seems like here they have taken it to a whole nother level, building everything with pegs and slots and little mechanical dimples that let everything be superposable. The pistons in the legs actually work as pistons. You wouldn't really want them to, but you can pose the leg exactly how you want it to be and then just drip a little bit of plastic cement in there and get it all exactly right. It's just kind of wild. Like, Games Workshop, why did they absolutely pull out all the stops for the Cerastus Knights? I love it. It's so cool. I want to see them do this on everything moving forward, because a lot of stuff is just kind of, it's like, it is what it is. Like the new Rogel Dorn tank with the missing floor, the missing bottom of the tank. Like, you're not going to include that in the box, but you're going to give us functional ammo belt chains? It's incredible. I hope that this is a good sign of things to come. Maybe they got a new engineer working there who is brilliant, or maybe they stole somebody who makes Gundam kits, and now they're working for Games Workshop doing a great job on stuff like this. But I think it's super, super cool. It's definitely a simpler process to do this on essentially a giant robot, where like making a fully posable Magnus the Red would be nearly impossible. It's kind of like, when you're looking at Star Wars, I always got Star Wars action figures when I was a kid, and Stormtroopers were perfect because they're wearing suits of armor, and so the joints are all perfectly hidden. But then when you buy Luke Skywalker, he's just got these big dumb joints everywhere that are sort of sculpted into like his clothing, and he's got his little wobbly head that's on a ball joint, and it just doesn't look right on a human or on a fleshy thing, but on a robot, it works really well. And I really want to get this chain in my hands and just flop it around a little bit and see how good it is. See how hard is it to actually glue it all perfectly together so that, you don't have a chain with a couple of links that are permanently attached. this is definitely a plastic glue job. You don't want to accidentally get super glue in this. I've been using ultra thin super glue a lot recently, which is a wonderful, wonderful tool, but it is runny. And sometimes you're just trying to get that perfect little drop of ultra thin super glue, and then the whole piece is now permanently looks exactly like it does. Man, what an absolute engineering marvel. Still too expensive. Still far too expensive, but if this is the kind of work that's going into these kits, then it's still almost worth it. Where if it was just 2 monopose Cerastus Knights for 2 bills apiece, it would be frankly annoying. Although I guess what's still, the Cerastus Lancer is the best one. It's the best one by far. It'll insta-kill almost any tank in the game, where these 2 loadouts, essentially they both have the same sword. The chainsaw and the sword have the same weapon profile, and then the 2 guns, the flamethrower or the heavy bolter or the mega bolter, they're both going to throw out a decent number of shots, but the recent errata took the Overwatch stratagem away from Knights, which kind of I don't know, it's probably a good move because you would, every single time with the Knight Lancer with the flamethrower, you will always Overwatch that flamethrower anytime anything comes near you. And it is kind of, it's a feel bad moment when you get Overwatched by the perfect thing to use the Overwatch stratagem. I think they probably should have come up with some way so that torrent weapons still hit on 6s. Like maybe you just ignore the torrent rule and you go through the normal style of roll to hit, roll to wound, so that Overwatch doesn't feel insanely good on some weapons and just completely useless on other weapons. But they didn't have to just take it away from the Knights. It's one of those rules. Games Workshop thinks they're so clever when they write rules. They think that they're such geniuses with keywords and with all of these interlocking, interweaving rules. And then every now and then they just have to do stuff like, oh my God, Knights can't have Overwatch. We just can't figure it out. We just can't make it work. And then they just have to have well, why is that rule the way it is? Just cause. And then that just makes it so much more confusing when you're reading other rules. Ooh, speaking of rules, the new detachment rules dropped for the Space Marines, and they're very differently written to the detachment rules for the Tyranids. The detachment that they first showed off for the Space Marines that makes essentially the first company veteran models for Space Marines a little bit better, they list off each individual veteran type unit in the codex, which is certainly a way to do it, but I guess that's kind of giving away that they're not going to be adding any more of that type of unit into the codex, where with the Tyranids, they built new keywords into existing units so that the different detachments all synergize properly with the specific units that they want to. Like the feeder detachment only works for like psychophages and rippers and a couple of other things, where the invasion detachment only works with like the different types of lictors. Where for Space Marines, they listed out each individual unit specifically, which is really annoying because what if they come out with Primaris Vanguard veterans? Then they're going to have to go back and rewrite the detachment rule to include Vanguard veterans, as opposed to just writing in a keyword so that if they add a new thing with the Vanguard keyword, it works with that detachment. It's really weird. It's almost like there's different rules writers working at Games Workshop that are not communicating with each other to make sure that there's just a little bit of normalcy, or just have things be the same across the board. I don't know, it's very weird, but it's quite a train of thought coming off of the Cerastus Knight flamethrower. It really sent me off on a tangent. But man, I like the Cerastus Knights a lot. I almost wish these were just the normal Knights, because the normal Knights look really, really squatty next to the long, leggy Cerastuses. I just think they look so good, and they feel so much more titanic on the tabletop because they actually tower over everything, including Mortarion and Magnus and the other really big things in the game. Where the regular Stompy Knights, they're cool, they're cute, but just the increasing the leg size and kind of increasing the size of the shoulder pads, it adds so much. And one last thing about the Cerastus Knights, but the Knight Archeon sword is exactly the same sword as the white Bionicle from Bionicles. They're indistinguishable. Moving away from all of the cool new models and into what I worked on this week, I had the best game of Warhammer I have had yet in 10th edition, probably, I don't know, my 20th game of Warhammer, but finally, I actually got some work done. I played my Tyranids with the index rules, and I very nearly won the game if we ended on turn 3. It was so great. I had so many bugs on the board that they couldn't all be blown away incredibly quickly. I got through the entire secondary mission deck. It felt so good every turn. I was knocking out all 3 of my secondaries. I was doing really good on primaries, and I was winning the game handily, turn 1, 2, and 3. Although at the end of turn 3, I no longer had any units left on the board, and that's kind of when everything kind of turned around a little bit. Also, just rules question for everybody in the audience. When you get tabled, do you just play out, does your opponent just play out the rest of the game by themselves, or do you just stop the game right then and there? I feel like it's not fair if you stop the game right then, because you could be tabled but be winning on points. So they do need the opportunity to get more points, but it just feels really lame to have your opponent play out the last 2 turns of the game by themselves, in which case they just max out on mission points for, like, they just get to 100 points, they get a perfect score. It just feels weird. I don't know exactly what you're meant to do when you get tabled, but it does feel a little bit awkward. But I love the Tyranids. I've been playing a lot of Space Marines, and I have not been enjoying playing Space Marines because Space Marines are really, really squishy. The game is full of really good strength, really good AP weapons, and Space Marines die so fast. But good strength and good AP guns versus Tyranids, bring it on. I have so many bodies. Go ahead and las cannon a single zone throw up to death. I have 5 more. Fire your Demolisher cannon into a squad of Gaunts, because I'll just respawn 3 of them with a stratagem. It's wonderful. The Tyranid are so much fun to play. I've been going so hard on getting my 2,000 points of Tyranids up and running. It was a 1,500 point game, but very, very soon I will be at a proper 2,000 points. The only thing I'm waiting on is for Exocrines to come back in stock. I've been using the Psychophage as a proxy for the Exocrine, but I want one of those models. And speaking of out of stock, Games Workshop, just an open statement to Games Workshop Direct, make some more models. Holy cow, almost everything in all of Warhammer 40k is out of stock currently. The prices on eBay are the worst I have ever seen. Just make more models. I want to buy stuff. Please make some more models so that stuff comes back in stock and I can actually buy them. Because holy moly, it is definitely the worst I have ever seen it. There's been a lot of instances in Games Workshop's past of like, oh yeah, this thing is gone or this thing is gone, and it takes, but usually it's just like one model. Like it takes, if you're really waiting on Hellions for Dark Eldar, they're just on the back burner, you're gonna have to wait a long time. But right now, it's literally almost every single Tyranid unit. I think the only thing you can order right now is Raveners and the brand new Lictors they showed off. And that's literally the only things you can buy right now for Tyranids. Games Workshop, make some more models. And while Games Workshop has been hard at work procrastinating on making more models, we have been hard at work making some terrain. Over on our Patreon, we have a brand new STL terrain set every single month, and this month we have the Gothic Administratum, a grimdark cathedral that can be constructed either complete or in ruin. We also make extra episodes of Eons of Battle where we take a look at our viewers' miniatures and give some ideas and critiques of how to improve their painting, and we have a tier you can get your name on one of my Black Templar Space Marines, and you can continue to get stomped every single week when I play games of Warhammer 40,000. I have been cranking out models at breakneck speeds in order to get more games of Warhammer 40k in, and in the near future, I'll have some really cool stuff to show off. And a big thanks to World of Warships for sponsoring this video. Don't forget to use their promo code MEGADETH to get some free goodies in the game.